Hey everyone, it's Lexie. So in today's video, I'll be sharing with you all the books that I ended up reading in the month of September and the books that I plan on reading in October. So September was a really great reading month for me. I read a total of 6 books and they're all over in terms of genre, and I think part of that contributed to this pretty high book count this month is that I just got into a lot of audiobooks. There was a few nonfiction, and I do tend to read nonfiction. I prefer to read it, listen to it on audiobook, so that helped. But yeah, I definitely kind of read a good variety of books too. Like I said, there's nonfiction, there's fantasy, historical fiction, all over the place, and so it made for a very interesting reading month. And so yeah, without further ado, let's get started. And before we get started, I do want to apologize that the kind of audio is out of sync with this video. I don't have time to re-record it, so I do apologize. I don't know why the video got corrupted this way, but yeah, if you want, you can just listen to the audio on this. I'm sorry. So I'm finally happy to say, because I've had these books on my TBR since May, that I finally finished them, and it is the last 2 books in the Dragonheart Legacy by Nora Roberts, the second book being The Becoming and the final book being The Choice. And I am so happy I finally finished this. I think I've just been really tired recently. I've been really busy with work and, Willow and all these things. So sitting down to read a fantasy has been pretty daunting. So I got the audiobooks for these 2 from the library, and I just listened to it as I was driving to work and stuff. And I definitely it made for a much more enjoyable reading experience, because like I said, I've just been so tired recently that I can't really dedicate a lot of brain cells at the end of the day to reading a fantasy. But I was really this was not my favorite Nora Roberts trilogy, but I thought it was pretty decent. I gave both of them a 3 out of 5 stars. I felt like my kind of major complaint with these 2 is that there's a lot of stuff happening in the beginning and the end, and really not a lot of stuff happening in the middle, and that was kind of consistent for both of these 2 books in particular. I read the first book back in 2021, so it was a while, and I was determined to finish this. But basically the premise of this is we follow a girl named Breen who ends up on finding that her father, who passed away, left her a couple $1 million, so she decides to quit her job and go stay in Ireland for a little bit to see if she can start a writing career. And while she's there, she kind of gets intertwined with this magical realm, and it kind of goes off from there. There's a lot of I would say kind of similar themes in a lot of Nora Roberts fantasy trilogies, and I really love the Year One trilogy. That one I think is my favorite. This one, like I said, there was a lot of excitement in the beginning and the end, and really not a lot of stuff happening in the middle. So it was, I felt like the pacing was kind of off for both of these, and so like I said, I felt like it could have been condensed to a duology with kind of what was happening. And I felt like everything was resolved a little bit too quickly too as well, so that made it kind of an okay fantasy read. Like I said, I love her Year One trilogy, and this one was just kind of middle of the road. So I think if you are a fan of Nora Roberts, I would maybe skip this one. But like I said, overall it was not bad, but it just wasn't my favorite. Next, I ended up reading Romancing Mr. Bridgerton by Julia Quinn. I'm determined to kind of finish the Bridgerton series. I've just been marathoning 1 or 2 a month, so I want to finish it by the end of the year. But I definitely become obsessed. Like I said, I did not like the first season of Bridgerton, and I've just become obsessed after the second season. And so my friend from Spain got me the first 4 books, and so I read the first 4 now, and I bought the next box set for the next 4, so I'm excited to dive into those. This one follows Colin and Penelope and their love story. I think this one was my favorite so far. I think now that I'm venturing into the books, especially we had Benedict's, which I haven't seen there isn't a season for it yet, and the next 4 don't have a television adaptation. So I found the ones that were adapted, especially Anthony's and Colin's books, I felt like they were, there's a lot of differences, especially Anthony's in particular, so it was hard not to compare the TV show to the book source material, but I still really enjoyed it. Colin has some little bit of red flags here or there, but I really loved the friends to lovers trope. It's just, especially reading these, it's just because like I said, I've been so busy and tired that it's just been easier for me to read and enjoy and fall in love with these books. They're just fun and easy to read. So I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Like I said, Colin is a little bit He has some like issues that I think are a little bit problematic, but I still really enjoyed it. I still really like how with each book we're kind of getting a more ensemble cast. I felt especially like for the first two it was very much isolated to that couple, but I feel like as the series is growing you get more of the characters being involved, and I'm just excited for Eloise's book. So that's the next one in line. But like I said, these are just kind of fun books to read when I want to read, but I don't have the like brain capacity to do so. So like I said, I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next, continuing on with my audiobooks, I got this one from the library as well, and it was The Third Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop. This one I really enjoyed actually, because I really don't know too much about this actress besides her being in Gilmore Girls, and so this is kind of just talking about her life growing up, how she ended up kind of being within, you know, Broadway and the theater, how that started out and how she eventually kind of transitioned into like television and like movies and those type of things. And I really liked it. I think she's quite like scrappy, and like she doesn't like take anything from anyone, so it was really fun kind of reading about her story and like growing up and kind of in a, you know, household with an abusive father, those type of things. So I thought she got really personal with this memoir, so it was really, you know, interesting to hear her story and how that has very much shaped her career. And like even in particular she mentioned like her mother and her grandmother did not have a good relationship, and that's why she was drawn to Gilmore Girls, because it could let her kind of explore the dynamic of, you know, Lorelai and Emily's relationship similar to her mother's and grandmother's relationship. So I thought that was really interesting, and I think she's had a really interesting life. Like I said, she doesn't shy away from really like dark subject matter and like kind of the, I guess, less perfect parts of life. So I really appreciate that candor in this one. So I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I finished it in one day. Like I listened at two times speed, but I finished it in one day. Like I could not put it down. It was just really interesting, and like I said, there's a little bit of humor in here, but she's really kind of honest and, like I said, scrappy and doesn't take anything from anyone. So I really enjoyed this. Like I picked up my own physical copy that is in the mail right now because I really enjoyed this. So I think if you're a fan of Gilmore Girls, I think you'll really enjoy this, especially because I didn't really know too much about her career or like anything like that. So it was really interesting to learn more about her. So I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. Like I said, I really enjoyed it. Next, I finally picked up this historical fiction, which was Woman on Fire by Liz Barr, and this is one that's been on my TBR for quite a bit, and I've been trying to get back into my historical fiction reading, and this one just seemed really interesting, but it's kind of like a it kind of took me by surprise. It's kind of a mix of Gone Girl with a historical fiction, which kind of took me by surprise. But we follow Jules, who is this very young journalist who really wants to prove herself. So she ends up working for this world-renowned investigative journalist who is tasked with finding this one of his friends' family's kind of painting that was stolen by the Nazis during World War II, and she ends up getting intermingled with Margot, who is this world-renowned art gallerist who has some connection to this this painting, and it not only involves like the investigation but also kind of the lengths that Margot is going to get this painting. And Margot is kind of like, I would say, like kind of like Amy from Gone Girl, like she's full-on psychopath. So that kind of took me by surprise in terms of having that kind of psychological, like crazy character who's literally doing crazy stuff in amongst this like historical fiction, like crime, and like trying to find what happened to this painting. So like I said, it took me by surprise. Like I was not expecting that at all. Like I said, it really surprised me. And yeah, I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed some of the aspects of here, but I feel like a lot of, especially as it got towards the end, I felt like it really dragged on because I felt like it had really good pacing and then it really slowed down for a bit, and where we got kind of these other storylines that I felt like took away from the narration or the overall story of this one. But it was still really exciting, especially the end. I was like, oh my god, like it was like chaos. And I was not expecting that like blend of Gone Girl with like a historical fiction, like crime, you know, those type of things. So like it definitely took me by surprise. And yeah, I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I thought it was like pretty good. Like I said, I really loved like kind of the investigation to find a painting that has been essentially lost to time and kind of uncovering how this painting traveled throughout the war and like how it was stolen by like this Nazi and like all these things. Like I thought that was really interesting, and then that like crazy Gone Girl-esque side like definitely made it really exciting. But like I said, I think it had some pacing issues, that it felt like it was just dragging on at the end. But nevertheless, like I said, I still really enjoyed this, and I think it's like, if you're looking for a really unique historical fiction, I think definitely pick this one up. Lastly, this is another audiobook that I got from the library. It is Something Lost and Something Gained by Hillary Clinton. This book I really enjoyed. I was really like, I enjoyed it so much that like I had a physical copy, and I said to my sister, I was like, you're gonna really like this. So I gave it to her. So this one I gave a 4 out of 5 stars, and it's basically, I would say, like a part 2 to what happened. If you're familiar with her other book where it kind of talks about the 2016 election and kind of the aftermath of this, I would say this is kind of like a post-Trump presidency book. And I will say, like, it was really interesting to hear some of the stuff that she's done kind of after all that. But this book did give me a lot of anxiety, because it is talking about if Trump were to win the 2024 election, like what our world would look like, and especially for like women's rights, immigration, all these things. Like, it's very upsetting to think, like, it was giving me so much anxiety reading it because of how horrible that world would be. But I think she does a really good job at like just saying, like, this is the current state of the world and this is kind of the aftermath of the Trump presidency. But here is something that's good that's come out of it. So in particular, when Trump tried to, or like basically pull the Afghanistan troops out of, or the troops out of Afghanistan, and the consequence that had for especially a lot of prominent women. It talked about how a lot of people came together, a lot of networks and organizations, and how she helped get, I guess, like over 100 women and their family out of Afghanistan, and like the human resilience that came out of it. So even though there is essentially something that is lost from this, we also gain something. So even though there was a lot of negative things that came out of the Trump presidency, that we're still dealing with the after effects, the shockwave of that, there is a lot of positive things that have come out of it with how people have responded. So I think, despite it being, like I said, giving me a lot of anxiety and fear and anxiety and these type of things, it was good to see kind of what has come out of it, how we can persevere, and these type of things. So like I said, really interesting. I lent my like physical copy to my sister because I know she would like that too. So yeah, like I said, I would say just be wary if you are anxious for this upcoming election. Maybe wait to see how things play out, hopefully in a positive way, so that anxiety that I'm feeling, you don't have to go through with kind of seeing what happens with this election. But like I said, I think it's a very important read. Next, kind of moving on to my October TBR, like there are books on here that I'm really excited to dive into. The first one is definitely a new release that comes out at the end of October that I don't think I will finish by the end of this month, but I will definitely, as soon as I get my hands on a copy, I'm going to be reading it right away. And it is The Grey Wolf by Louise. This is the next installment in the Inspector Gamache series, which is my favorite series of all time, and especially for crime series, I don't really like to know what the plot is going into the next installment, basically. So basically the premise of this is we follow Inspector Gamache, who's the homicide detective in Quebec, and a lot of the crimes are somehow connected to this town called, Fruit Pines, which kind of gives you kind of Stars Hollow vibe, which is a small town that is just so connected with each other. And it kind of goes off from there. So like I said, I don't even like, especially with crime novels that are like a series that I like, I just don't read the synopsis, I just dive right in. So I'm definitely excited. This is probably my most anticipated release of the year, so I can't wait to dive into that one. And kind of going on with a Halloween theme, I will then pick up So in October, I definitely was holding off kind of reading some of these books around this time of year, especially with Halloween. And this is a new release that just came out that I can't wait to dive into, and it's called Graveyard Shift by M.L Rio. I really loved If We Were Villains, and this is her newest book. This is her second book that has come out, and I feel like this is just the perfect book to read around this time of year. And it is very short too, so it shouldn't be too hard to get through. I could probably spend like a weekend trying to get through this, but it says, every night in the college ancient cemetery, 5 people cross paths as they work the late shift. A bartender, a rideshare driver, a hotel receptionist, an unofficial steward of the church that looms over them, and the editor-in-chief of the college paper, always in search of a story. One dark October evening in the churchyard, they find a hole that wasn't there before, a fresh open grave with where no grave should be. But who dug it and by whom? Atmospheric and eerie, with an ensemble cast her fan loves and a delightful familiar academic backdrop, Graveyard Shift is a modern gothic tale in If We Were Villains kind of style. So yeah, this one just seems like the perfect book to read around this time, especially because it is like fairly kind of spooky and dark. So yeah, definitely excited to dive right in. And like there even is like a cocktail menu I was looking at the back, and like a playlist. So I feel like this would just be a fun book to read as we kind of kickstart into Halloween. Next, this is carryover from last month that I didn't end up picking up, and it is Horse by Geraldine Brooks. This is a book that I picked up actually when we were in Quebec City last spring, and it just seems like really interesting. Like I said, I've been trying to get into historical fiction, back into historical fiction, and this one is kind of very similar, where it's like this horse. It just sounds really interesting. I talked about it in my previous TBR, so I'm not gonna go into detail, but I'll just read the little catching slogan. It says, a discarded painting in a junk pile, a skeleton in an attic, and the greatest racehorse in history. From the author, so it says, a discarded painting in a junk pile, a skeleton in an attic, and the greatest racehorse in American history. From these strands, a Pulitzer Prize winner braids a sweeping story of spirit, obsession, and injustice. But yeah, if you want to, I don't want to kind of be repetitive, but yeah, this is definitely carryover. And I don't know if I'll get to this one, but this definitely is one that I want to read this fall, because there's kind of some chonkers on this month's TBR. But yeah, this one is definitely just seems really interesting. Next, I have the sequel to Ordinary Monsters, which I read at the beginning of this year and I really enjoyed, which is Bringer of Dust by M.L Rio. This one I'm really excited to pick up because I was pleasantly surprised with how much I really liked the first book, and I was a little bit hesitant reading it because I heard really mixed reviews, especially on Goodreads, and I think part of the issue is people were expecting something similar to Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, and I never read that, so I wasn't comparing that to my mind. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really fun kind of historical fantasy, and so it takes place in the 1800s, where we follow these group of orphans that are being kind of brought to this school for people who have some sort of special powers, and it kind of goes off from there, and there's kind of this dark kind of murderous kind of streak going on as well, which I thought was like really creepy in like Victorian England. So this one is definitely a chonker, and I think it'll take me a little bit to get through. But yeah, I feel like this, like even this cover is very Halloweeny, so it came out I think at the perfect time of year. But yeah, I'm definitely excited to dive into this one. Even though it's quite a chonker, I'm really excited to kind of revisit these characters, and there's still a lot of like mystery that was left unsolved, or like there's a lot of questions that were left unanswered with the first book, so I'm very excited to see what happens next and figuring out what more is going on. And lastly, like I said, I think this is wishful thinking on my part to think that I can read all of these, but next up, this is one that is a fantasy that I just feels interesting and fun to read around this time of year, which is House of Beating Wings by Olivia Wildenstein, and this is kind of gives me ACOTAR vibes. Like I think it's there's a lot of similar tropes, but it says, all her life Fallon has been marked by her half-humanity. Nearly every pure-blooded fae at court has looked down on her for her curved ears, lack of magic, and fondness for water serpents. But never Dante, the prince of Lucy. The flirtatious royal has held Fallon's heart ever since Dante gave Fallon her first kiss. But as doubt creeps in on how a fae prince and a halfling could ever have lasting happiness together, Fallon finds hope in an oracle's prophecy. She'll be queen, but first she must free the crows. Confused yet determined, Fallon embarks on the hunt that could give her everything she's wanted, but couldn't have power, respect, perhaps even acceptance, and most deliberately her prince. But unknown to Fallon, her quest will unleash more than just her destiny, and when the ancient demon awakens, he plans to have Fallon all to himself. Again, this kind of gives me a vibe between ACOTAR and the Cruel Prince trilogy, and like those are two of some of my favorite fantasy series, so this one is kind of, I feel like, kind of goes into it, and I feel like the sprayed edges are very, very kind of fall-esque, so I'm excited to dive into this one. Yeah, I don't know if I'll get to all of these on my TBR because I do have that big chonker of a book, and I definitely will be prioritizing Louise Penny's book as well, so I'm definitely excited for this one. I don't know if I'll have to wait until November to read this, but nevertheless, I'm still excited to, you know, eventually pick it up. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below what books you read this month and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys.